voter register, and 5, the perceived loss of confidence generally among the population in our electoral system. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, we have prepared a comprehensive response to the allegations made by the NPP for submission to various stakeholders and partners whom the NPP sent their complaints to. We wish, however, to engage the Ghanaian public through you in order to dispel what are clear falsehood designed to cast doubts about the credibility of our electoral system. For the avoidance of doubt, we want to state that the claims made by the New Patriotic Party lack merit and cannot constitute a basis for the compilation of a new voters register. A cursory assessment of the claims reveal a desperate attempt by a party bedeviled with strife, deep division, violence, and general lawlessness to prepare the grounds for a rejection of their imminent defeat in the 2016 elections. It is the latest installment in a series of efforts to shift blame onto others whenever their incompetent and mediocre campaign bring them defeat at elections. In our view, ladies and gentlemen, the press conference addressed by Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia bore an uncanny resemblance to the hoopla that preceded their filing of a petition at the Supreme Court purporting to challenge the validity of the victory chalked by President John Dramani Mahama and the NDC in the 2012 elections. We submit that these latest claims about the register are as fraudulent and frivolous as the Supreme Court case, and we will demonstrate this presently. Number 1, the voter population as a percentage of the national population. Ladies and gentlemen, the NPP claimed at yesterday's event that that Ghana's voter population of 14 million indicates a bloated register because the 2010 population and household census conducted by the Ghana Statistical Service pegged the country's population at 25 million, out of which 50% or 12.5 million were of the ages of 18 years and above. This argument is deeply flawed because the use of the 2010 population of 25 million as basis for determining what percentage of that population should be on the register ignores population growth between 2010 and 2012. Ladies and gentlemen, the rate of growth of our population is estimated by the Statistical Service to be at 2.5% per annum. To estimate Ghana's population as of 2012 and proceed to determine if a 14 million voter population is accurate, there is the need to adjust the 2010 figure by 2.5% to know the population for 2011 and proceed to adjust the 2011, adjust that by 2.5% again to arrive at the population of Ghana as at 2012. It is after this that one can make a valid and sensible comparison between the voter population as of 2012 and the national population in the same year. And I repeat, in the same year. In other words, you cannot pick the national population figure as of 1 year, that is 2010, and be comparing it with the voter population in another year, that is 2012, and begin to derived percentages and building arguments therefrom. To compare the voter population of 2012 to the national population as of 2010 assumes that our population has been static since the last census was conducted and that there has been no movement in ages of those captured. It also assumes that no one has been born or died in between the times of the census and the time of compilation of the register. Furthermore, we are at a loss as to what logic informed the NPP's decision to hold the Statistical Services population figures as accurate and flawless and proceed to doubt the accuracy of the Electoral Commission's figures, given that the mode of capture of both sets of data differ considerably. In view of the fact that all stakeholders in elections in Ghana participated in the compilation of the voters' register, and the fact that the Electoral Commission deployed the latest biometric technology in the compilation of same, we are inclined to believe in the accuracy of the EC's figures more than those in the population census. Dr. Bawumia's sudden belief in and reliance on data by the Ghana Statistical Service to back his claims evinces clear duplicity, given his well-documented attacks on the same institution whose figures he has constantly sought to bastardize. He's been calling them, describing them in various terms as cooked, fabricated, and so on, when it comes to his analysis on the economy. But when it comes to his analysis on the voters' register, he is prepared to hold the Statistical Service figures as more accurate than the voter registration, when everybody knows that the technology applied for the capture of the two sets of figures differ, and one is more inclined to believe in the higher accuracy of the voter registration figures than the technology that was used in the capture of the population census. While the MPP is known to practice the politics of convenience, this will surely go down as a new low in shallow opportunism. The singling out of constituencies in the voter region for accusations of extraordinary increases in numbers of registered voters between 2008 and 2012 is reminiscent of the disrespect and disdain with which the MPP has treated persons of certain tribal and ethnic extractions. Again, ladies and gentlemen, the nation agreed. There was consensus among all the political players that the 2008 register was incurably flawed. And that was the reason why we did the 2012 register. And that was the reason why MPP insisted on with the use of the latest biometric technology in capturing the 2012 voters register. Is it not interesting now that MPP will now hold the 2008 figures as accurate, and on that basis, judging the 2012 register as incurably flawed? What type of logic is this? Now let's go to the validity of registration with NHIS cards. Ladies and gentlemen, Regulation 1.3 of the Public Elections Registration of Voters, Regulation 2012, CI 72, states as follows, and I beg to quote: a person who applies for registration as a voter shall provide as evidence of identification one of the following. And I want to emphasize one of the following because I'll come back to it later on. A passport. B, a driver's license. C, a national identification card. D, a national health insurance card. E, an existing voter identification card. Or F, one voter registration identification guarantee form as set out in Form 1 of the schedule that has been completed and signed by 2 registered voters, unquote. What the last one means is that if you don't possess any of the documents earlier mentioned, it is sufficient that you have 2 people who have already registered to come and attest to the fact that you are a citizen of Ghana, and that is enough for you to get your name on the voters' register. Subsequent to this, a Supreme Court ruling made the continuous use of the NHIA card for the purpose of identification invalid. The MPP is therefore arguing that since this regulation was used in the compilation of the 2012 register, there exists the possibility that a number of voters registered by means of NHIA cards and such persons should have their names expunged from the register. Ladies and gentlemen, this argument is flawed because what they are calling for is retroactive legislation, which is not permitted by the 1992 Constitution, or for that matter, any properly functioning democracy. More tellingly, this demand is speculative in that the MPP would be hard-pressed to furnish the Electoral Commission with a list of such persons, as no such list exists. Expunging the names of persons who registered with NHIA cards in 2012, even if they were to be identified, is not the solution to such an occurrence. In the event that this were to happen, affected persons would have to be given the opportunity to use the remaining valid forms of identification to register, as failure to do so would amount to disenfranchising them. Let's say that the voters were there in their houses. You invited them to register their names, and you gave out the various options of identifying themselves as Ghanaians, which included the NHIS card. And they proceeded and got themselves registered. At the point of registration, since it was the choice of the registrant to present any of the 6 modes of identification at the polling station or at the registration center, the fact that I used a driving license to identify myself as a Ghanaian doesn't mean that I don't have a passport, or I do not have an existing voter ID card, nor my citizenship cannot be attested to by 2 registered voters. These are options, 6 options available. So if somebody decides that I'll use the the NHIA card, which was available in my pocket at the time I proceeded to register, by what logic are you going to assume that subsequently, if the court rules that the use of the NHIA card is improper and it is expunged from the list of options, what you need to do to establish in exactitude is that identify all the people who registered by the use of NHIA card, line them up, and request of them to now proceed to identify themselves with any of the existing valid means. It is only after their inability to identify themselves with any of the 5 remaining means that you can begin drawing conclusions. But to say that somebody registered with an HIA card when he did not indicate on any form that he lacks any of the 6, then you proceed by saying that Supreme Court has ruled now in 2014, so the name should be expunged with effect from 2012. That is the point. It's very, very unfair, and it cannot be supported in any jurisdiction. Simplistic calls have been made by the MPP for the compilation of a new register as a way of addressing this problem. Again, we beg to differ on this point as well. One of the forms of identification for registration under Regulation 1.3 of CI 72 is an existing voter identification card. In other words, if you delete the National Health Insurance card, the use of an existing voter identification card is still permissible by the law. And so if you open the register today, and then people approach the registration center to register, and they present an existing voter ID card derived from the 2012 registration, how are you going to determine that, as for this card, it was procured through the use of an HIA card, and so I will drive that person away? In other words, the same people, everybody on the 2012 register is already in possession of an existing ID card. And they are qualified to register. When they approach the registration center, they will be registered. So what will you be achieving? If your purpose is to open the compilation of a new register and then targeting those who you claim are on the register who did so with the use of the NHIA card, you will be better off preventing the use of the NHIA card in subsequent limited registration exercises. I hope you follow this argument. We do. Very, very simple. This is elementary logic. So as I said, this means that if the registration of a person by means of an NHIA card were to be declared invalid, for which reason a new register is to be drawn up for the 2016 elections, such a person will be entitled by law to be registered if he produced a 2012 voter identification card, which he obtained by use of an invalid NHIA card. The perceived invalidity of his registration would therefore not have been cured by the opening of a new register or compilation of a new register. Number 3, let's now proceed to deal with the perceived existence of minors on the register. We are aware, ladies and gentlemen, that limitations exist in the ability of the biometric registration system to determine the ages of persons who apply to register for elections. During the compilation of the 2012 register, there were accusations and counter-accusations among the parties over the registration of minors in their various strongholds. After the process, pictures of alleged minors were shown to all parties by the Electoral Commission. Though the pictures suggested that the individuals were minors, the existing legal framework does not and did not permit the expunging of the names of such persons in the absence of documentary evidence. In other words, before we proceeded to apply the biometric system to capture the 2012 register, we were all convinced beyond reasonable doubt that with the use of the biometric features, it was not possible for any individual to register more than once because there is a deduplication exercise. We are also convinced that it was not possible for anybody to use another person's biometric features to cast their vote. That one we were all sure. But what we were cautioned about was that the biometric system or the BVR machine does not have the capability of determining the age of the applicant for registration. In other words, if you put your thumb on the biometric machine, it cannot tell whether you are 18 years, above 18 years, below 18 years, or you are a presidential candidate who is around 72 years. You see, so you see, so the fallback position was that we should all do what is possible in our means as political parties and stakeholders to prevent underage people from registering. And ladies and gentlemen, you were all witnesses during the registration process. There were calls, accusations, and counter-accusations by the key political parties that, oh, we hear all the minors in Volta region are being registered. And the accusations are still continuing. That is what you heard yesterday. Then there were other accusations from NDC that we heard that in Ashanti region, newborn babies were being registered. You understand? So it tells you about the collective failure of the political players in their role to prevent the registration of people who were below the age of 18. Now, at the end of the registration exercise, we all met at IPAC, civil society players, all political parties, electoral commission officials, and we took a look at some of the faces. And clearly, you could see that they resembled faces of persons that were below 18 years of age. But we were caught by the law that once these faces have been registered, in the absence of any documentary evidence, hard facts, Electoral Commission has no legal basis of expunging these names. And when you refer to our subsequent document on electoral reform, we all agree that we should look at that area and find ways of providing a legal basis for Electoral Commission to delete names of persons that they have other supporting evidence to suggest that these people were not up to the elections age. We are still struggling about that. So the bottom line is that after the compilation of the 2012 register, it was generally agreed that there is a large possibility of people under 18 finding themselves on the electoral roll. It is a defect which is recognized by everybody. Again, another defect that we think the register suffers is the defect of containing the names of dead persons. But we should ask ourselves, should this be the basis for the compilation of a new voters register? Or, in other words, is the compilation of a new voters register a solution to these defects? And again, our answer is a big no. And that is one of the bases of NDC's continuous insistence about the maintenance of the current register. And I'll tell you why shortly. If names were captured in 2012 of persons that were as young as 14, and their names are still on the register, and in 2016, you are still struggling for the names to be expunged, you are assuming that ages are static. So those who were 14 years in 2012, by 2016, they are 18 years. So if you open the register to write names again, they will walk there and come and register because they have become of age now. So if your main purpose of doing another register is to expunge those names, then that is not the answer. Rather, you must be happy that by 2016, this defect would have been cured by the passage of time. By 2016, every name or person whose name is on the register and he was as young as 14 in 2012, by 2016, he would have matured into a qualified voter. So if the register contains their names, the register is rather correcting itself by the passage of time. Now, if you open the register in 2016, what you are going to encourage is that still the motivation of the various political parties to take advantage of the system, which prevented them from blocking people who were underage in their strongholds, is even higher now. So you are now going to open the opportunity for people who are under 18, as at the 2016 elections, to find their names on the register. That is why we say that the register as it is now will be cleaner and far more accurate than anyone that will be captured in 2016, because the motivation to push minors on the register still exists. And we are yet to be told of a technology that is age-sensitive, which can be deployed in the capture of the new register in 2016. And I want to assure you that all the persons who are making this noise will be the first to agree to the compilation of a new register if we're able to get a biometric machine that will tell you that, my brother, you are less than 18, go away. Then you come and put your finger there, yes, you are 72 plus, you can be presidential candidate, so let's include your name. You see, so, but since nothing of that sort exists, you are going to have more of the same, and even worse. Because if you captured underage people now, it will carry, the register will carry those names to 2020 before they mature into voting age. And if you doubt this analysis, just rewind your mind to what happened when the voters register was open for limited registration in 2014. And I must say that traditionally, we've been replacing the register completely in 10-year intervals. So the 1992 register was completely replaced in 2002. And the 2002 register was completely replaced in 2012. So if we are going by the same principles, then the earliest time that this register should be completely replaced should be 2022. And in between the registration periods, the 10-year period, there is opportunity every year to do a limited registration because ages are not static. So those who are 17 now, if you are capturing the register, they cannot register legally. But next year, they will be 18. So next year, there should be an opportunity for people who have turned 18 to register and vote. And that is why every year, there is limited registration till at the end of a 10-year period, we completely replace the register after a population census. So what happened in 2014 was that when the register was open for limited registration, first of all, there was hue and cry all over the country that the exercise was a failure because it was poorly patronized. And if you doubt the inclusion of minors on the register, that was a concrete evidence. Why? Because those names of persons who were captured in 2012, when they were 16 years and 17 years, they couldn't go to register again. Because if you did, you will be caught for double registration and your name will be expunged completely from the register. And indeed, after that limited registration, go and ask Electoral Commission the names of persons who tried to register again and for which reason their names got expunged because of the detection of the double registration. So the fact that the limited registration was poorly patronized was an indication that the 2012 registration captured people who were below the 18-year mark. And so when 2 years later they opened the register, there was nobody to go and register because their names had already been captured. Now, some people are saying that the existence of dead persons' names on the register constitute a reason why the register ought to be replaced. And I'm saying that that will amount to chasing the wind. Because if we start registration today, between the opening of the register and the completion of the registration process, people will die. Somebody can go and register, and by the time he reaches his house, he is dead. So what are you going to do with that name? It is not possible to expunge those names at the level of our development now. But at least we are confident in one thing, that even if those names exist on the register, nobody can use those names to vote. So why would you go into the trouble of removing that person's names, and because of that, you order the compilation of a whole new register? It defies logic. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think that that argument also cannot hold water. Now, the fourth claim, which was added only yesterday, was that there are aliens on our register, names of aliens on our register. The claim by the NPP that persons from Togo and Cote d'Ivoire have had their names on the electoral register is not only fraudulent, but also constitute a gratuitous attack on the people of the Volta and Brong Ahafo regions. As far as we are concerned, this claim is a continuation of the NPP's long-standing affinity to tribal politics, through which they associate people from certain ethnic and tribal extractions with wrongdoing and heap on several comments on them. This is unfortunate, ladies and gentlemen. You know the regions that border Togo. You have Volta region, you have Northern region, you have Upper East region. So why are you settling on the indigents of Volta region? They should come and explain to us. We strongly dispute the authenticity of the so-called Togolese register, which the NPP based its porous arguments on. They have a track record of concocting lies and fabricating evidence like they did at the Supreme Court in a bid to discredit their political opponents. A close examination of the pictures presented as evidence of registration by Togolese and Ivorians show a clear case of deceptive manipulation of photographs taken at different times. In many cases, the two pictures presented as those of one person bear no resemblance to each other. And more importantly, the pictures the NPP purports to be samples of a Togolese register do not bear the names of the supposed voters. Neither does it bear the age or gender of the supposed voters. NPP showcased the latest form of voter register from Togo. The register I saw, or the document I saw, which they are purporting to be extracts from the voter, the Togolese register. If you look at it carefully, you realize that whereas the faces they show on the one side, on the Ghana register, it has the picture and the name of the individual plus other details. In the case of Togo, they just put the picture there and then put some long serial number there. This is the latest form of voter registration that has just come from space. Because you see, as I stand here, if somebody should go to Time and take the picture, you don't even need to go to Time because NPP is in possession of the 2012 voters register. If they look through, pick my picture, and then put it on another document and call there and write there Benin. And then put my face there and put some number there which means nothing. And then begin telling everybody that I said Dunkatia is a Beninois. How are you going to prove or disprove this? You understand? So we are convinced beyond any doubt that the NPP deliberately manufactured this lie to justify unfounded calls by them and their surrogates for a new voters register. We find it curious that days after the NPP, in a bizarre press statement, claimed that some persons were going around collecting voter ID cards of unsuspecting Ghanaians with promises of giving them loans and jobs. Such dubious claims about the voters' register should be made. Ladies and gentlemen, is it not interesting that just last week, MPP issued a press statement that they have seen that some people are going around collecting voter ID cards of unsuspected individuals with the promise of giving them loans. In some cases, they give them money, and in some cases, they claim they give them cocoa fertilizer. Then only about 14 days or so, you come out to claim that you have collected 76,000 of those voter ID cards, and you have compared this one with the Togolese register. So between us, who was collecting the voter ID cards, they were complaining about. And it is very, very consistent with MPP's way of doing politics. If they are preparing to engage in an activity, they first project it on their political opponents. Then they proceed, whilst you are denying, they proceed to do that same thing. And when you begin complaining about that one, members of the public, including members in the media, will say that, oh, this is accusation and counter-accusation, so we don't know where the truth lies. Then they get away with what they are doing. It happened everywhere, including Talensi. When they started complaining that some people are sharing monies and sharing things, it turned out that they were actually engaged in that thing. And when they started complaining in Talensi, the same way they are complaining now, I told you that these are my cousins. And I know them very well. So, they know they have lost Talensi. So they are finding soft landing grounds. So they want to prepare the minds of Ghanaians that something wrong is happening in Talensi, so that in the end, when they lose, they have somebody to blame. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what MPP has been engaged in since 2012. They know that they are about to lose 2016, which will represent the third loss of a political party in a row. And they shudder to think about the consequences. And so they are beginning to question the credibility of an election yet to be held, so that after they are declared losers, they will have reasons to complain. That is precisely what they are doing. Because if you watch, Nanado and Bawumia are two people who have never done anything wrong, according to their own presumptions. Anytime they lose elections, they have something to blame or somebody to blame. When they lost 2012, they began blaming the Electoral Commission. They extended the blame to XTL or what? That this is an organization that was engaged in intercepting results that were being transmitted to Electoral Commission. So they are hiding gadgets there until the Africa Union observer team, led by cameras from your own media houses, followed them with Osafo Mafu and others to scrutinize the offices of that innocent company and to realize that nothing like that was happening. Even as we speak now, they had succeeded in planting that wrong impression in the minds of unfortunate individuals who are carrying it, that election results transmitted had been intercepted and so on. They didn't end there. They also blamed the international community that some 240,000 names, votes, were brought from outside to top up President Mahama's votes, and that was the reason why Nana Addo was defeated. When these allegations were subjected to scrutiny in the Supreme Court, it was found out that these were total fabrications. And indeed, the authors themselves were running away from these allegations, claiming that they never brought those allegations as part of their case. So again, ladies and gentlemen, it is the same, more of the same thing. Though we are convinced that these claims are false, if we were to assume that there was merit in them, elaborate provisions exist in our electoral laws to address issues of unqualified persons who are found on the register. These do not include the compilation of a new register. Regulation 16 to 25 of CIs 72 makes provision for challenging the qualifications of applicants during the registration process and objections after the registration of voters. If the MPP was sincere about ensuring a credible register and not motivated by malice, they would have availed themselves of these provisions in the law to effect the necessary corrections. That they failed to do so is a clearest indication yet that this is only an elaborate ruse devised to raise political tension to mask the intractable disunity that has affected them for months. You see, what the regulation says from Regulation 16 to 25, during the time of registration, because Ghanaians don't have a very, if you like, clear means of identifying ourselves as Ghanaians. That's why you see in the parts of the registration, they have made several options available to apply. Then the last option is also that the various individuals at the polling station, and indeed members of the general public, who believe that somebody is about to register, we live in this community with that person, and we have every reason to believe that he is a Burkinabe or he is from Bosnia. What you need to do is that you raise the issue at the point of registration, and then a form will be made available to you on which you write the name of the person and write your name and state your case. Then that one is kept. At the end of the registration period, because the determination of citizenship is not a simple thing that ought to be done through a press conference. There are elaborate, it's so weighty that the law makes elaborate provisions with which one could determine these issues. So the law makes provision for a district registration review committee If you study CI 72, it will tell you the composition of the committee. And these committees are established throughout the country, in every district. Then they will take a list of people who have been challenged and then invite them individually to come and prove that indeed they are Ghanaians. Those who are alleging will also be available to prove that they are not Ghanaians. At the end, there is a determination as to whether they are Ghanaians or not. And depending upon where the determination goes, you are now able to decide whether the names should be included in the register or not included in the register. This is a process which MPP itself had applied in Ododo-Diodio. They had applied it in Ashaman. They had applied it elsewhere. And they even applied it in Asuna South against Honorable Collins Dauda then. That Honorable Collins Dauda looks like a Burkinabe. So, there was an objection, a challenge to his registration. And it was taken through the process. In the end, MPP failed to prove that Collins Dauda was not a Ghanaian. And that's how come we now have a minister of local government. Otherwise, he will be in Burkina Faso. You see? So nobody can tell me that MPP does not know about this procedure. If they indeed know this procedure, and they fielded agents everywhere throughout the country, including Volta region. They have all their offices scattered in Volta region. What were they doing during the registration process? Why did they apply the law in all the other regions and decided to leave Volta region out, if indeed they did? And I can tell you that indeed in Volta region, there were names that were challenged and there were adjudications that were gone through and determinations were made. So while they were challenging these other people, what were they doing with the other names they are holding now, which they claim is 76,000? What were they doing with them? Are they telling us that they chose to challenge a few of them and allow the 2012 elections to be held, which they lost, so that they are now using the remainder to make a case? This cannot be understood properly by any stretch of our logic. Now, it is not only at the point of registration. The most important part of verifying the register happens when there is exhibition. And it is precisely for the purpose of checking the existence of wrong names on the register and the omission of some right names on the register that the nation spends huge amounts of money to exhibit the register in the localities, the very localities where the names were captured. And then citizens are invited to go and then object to the existence of names they think should not belong to the voters' register. From 2012 to date, that facility has been available. In fact, after 2014 limited registration, there was a whole exercise to exhibit the voters' register. We fielded 26,000 party agents to scrutinize the register. And I must add, we are yet to pay some of them. and because of that, we have some problems with those we deployed. But they were available for the exercise. And I believe in several of those polling stations, we met the MPP polling agents as well. So why would they not give them this 76,000 list to do their objection and process it through the provisions of CI 72? Ladies and gentlemen, the conduct of MPP in this whole replacement of voter register debate reminds me of GSS people who got access to an answer to a question, a mathematical question. And he's now looking for a formula that will generate that answer. Because they will first say that this is the reason why we say we should replace the register. When that is defeated, they jump to another reason why we should replace the register. When that is defeated, they jump to another one. Rather, pragmatic problem solving begins with situational analysis. Then, when you identify the problems, then you look for possible solutions to the problem. And then you test each of the possible solutions before you settle on one and begin to implement. No, MPP has chosen the formula, what they need to do. And they now want to take it back into the possible options and take it beyond that one to feed into the results of the situation analysis. They are putting problem solving upside down because they have a ready-made solution and they are looking everywhere for the problem which they will apply the solution to. Another example of the ridiculousness inherent in the MPP's claim is that the Ghanaian electoral register was compiled in 2012, while that of Togo was compiled in 2013 and revised in 2015. On what basis can it be said that 3 years after the elections have been held in Ghana, voters whose nationality the MPP questions on the basis of the fictitious 2015 Togolese register influenced the outcome? Is it the case that the MPP is saying that Ghanaians rather registered in Togo to influence the outcome of the Togolese elections? And unless they tell us that there is absolute certainty that people cannot move from Ghana to register in Togo. So they are very certain that wave flow is not possible. It is only there and then that they can then conclude that even if they found the names of people on the register, both in Ghana and in Togo, it can only happen that they were Togolese who came to register in Ghana. They must let us engage in scientific analysis. And then we will arrive at solutions to our national problems. But this type of approach, I'm sorry, is very, very problematic. Though we are convinced as I have said, that these claims are false, even if they were to be true, there are provisions, very rigorous provisions in the CI 72 that can be applied to delete these names without the compilation of a voters register. Now, suppose loss of confidence in Ghana's electoral system, and that is the last issue that I'll be dealing with. The New Patriotic Party, citing a report of the Center for Democratic Development, also claimed that the outcome of the frivolous electoral petition has resulted in the waning of public confidence in our electoral process. This, they say, is further justification for the need for a new register. This is the most absurd argument that can be made by any political party the size of the New Patriotic Party. We are unable to come to terms with the thinking behind such a stance. It is incongruous that a party that goes to court with a petition challenging the validity of the results of the 2012 elections and having same dismissed by the Supreme Court will turn around and say that the dismissed petition has resulted in the loss of confidence of the electoral system. The electoral system generates results, and you claim that these results are not correct. So we are going to Supreme Court to challenge the validity. So you go to Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court affirms the validity of the elections. Ladies and gentlemen, between the one whose results have been upheld and the one whose frivolous petition has been dismissed, who should the public have confidence in? So, if the Supreme Court verdict upholding Electoral Commission's verdict has led to the waning of confidence in our electoral process, what would have happened if the Electoral Commission had lost the case? Would that have led to an increase in confidence of the public in the electoral process? It defies logic again. Because the problem is not about finding people to go to court. And I don't want to repeat my earlier stance that any idiot can go to court. And what it means is that anybody can go to court and raise any accusation. At the registry, that person cannot be driven away, however frivolous his case might look like. They will fix a date for the hearing, and then it is only after the hearing that there will be a determination whether that case was indeed valid or frivolous. So if we move on the assumption that anytime anybody goes to court challenging the outcomes of any election, that brings down the confidence of the public in Electoral Commission, then everybody who has lost election will go to court. So, ladies and gentlemen, empirical evidence suggests that the public, including the members of MPP, have lost confidence in the people who filed the case. Look at the first respondent, or the first, one of the petitioners, the chairman of New Patriotic Party, Jacob Echebilamte. Where is he? The very persons in MPP who sat in the sun to toil for the party during the 2012 elections as party agents, who were described by Lawyer Addison and his like as glorified watchmen, and the others. They reserve the payment for them. That is the reason why Jake got the 66. That is my opinion. That is why Sir John never got back as the General Secretary of NPP. And that is why Lawyer Addison lost that premise with 22. And that is why Nana Addo and Bawumia are on their way to lose the elections. Because you see, you are in Accra. You send people to go and toil for a political party during an election, which if you had won, you parade yourself as a president, and you may not even meet any of those who stood in the sun to do that exercise. If their effort did not lead to your victory, that doesn't mean that they did not put in the effort. So instead of congratulating them, you go to court, and in the face of cameras, you go and call them glorified watchmen who slept for your tilapia to be stolen. They will be waiting for you at the same polling station. And that is why Addison got the 22. And that is why Jake also got the 66. And it's interesting, I don't know where the double numbers coming from. Because the Ghanaian public is wide awake and is in a position to distinguish between well-grounded and legitimate contributions geared towards further improvement in our electoral system and virtuous claims calculated as shielding the leaders of the MPP from blame when they lose the 2016 elections. If the MPP is desirous of finding an antidote to the string of poor showing at the polls, then it can be found in sober reflection on how to pull that party from the brink and halt its rapid descent into chaos and internecine feud. They must select a viable presidential candidate, craft a convincing message, and build a strong, cohesive party machinery to prosecute a credible campaign. The present state of affairs in that party, where confusion, mistrust, and incessant squabbles reign supreme, cannot be masked by a baseless fault-finding of the sort engaged in by Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia yesterday. We in the NDC, on the other hand, are poised to make meaningful contributions to ensure further gains in our electoral processes and systems, even as we rally firmly behind the one and only President John Dramani Mahama in his effort to implement policies and programs that are changing lives and transforming Ghana. We thank you for coming once again, and you may now ask questions. Thank you very much. The last question first. The last question seems to suggest that all the smaller political parties are calling for a new voters register. This cannot be true. So please, exorcise that thing from your thinking. There's nothing like that. What has happened is that after the elections and after the court verdict, the Electoral Commission, in conjunction with the key stakeholders, decided to embark on electoral reforms. So they requested for ideas and submissions for electoral reform, which position papers were submitted to the commission, including an MPP electoral reform document. Then together, we constituted an electoral reform committee. And the composition was made up of one representative each of the two main political parties. And I had the privilege of representing the National Democratic Congress on that committee. My colleague on the other side, Mr. Kwabena Agyepong, also represented the NPP. And then all the other smaller parties were asked to nominate two representatives. They did, and they nominated one person, I think from CPP, Kabila, from CPP, and another person from the Yes People's Party, forgotten the name. Civil society organizations were asked to bring their two nominees. And again, these two nominees, one was nominated from IEA, Dr. Jampo Ransford, and then the other person was nominated, I think they brought three nominees, CDD, and then another person, Dr. Jonah, Kwesi Jonah. All of them the three of them represented civil society organizations. And then the Electoral Commission was represented by two of the commissioners. And then a secretary was also provided from the Electoral Commission. So this committee was so representative. And then we approached our assignment with nationalism devoid of all political biases. In the end, we generated a document which represented the consensus position of the nation about what reforms the key players think we must embark upon. That document is available. I signed for NDC. My colleague Kwabena Agyepong also signed for MPP. All the others signed, and they all have copies. Ask them for those copies. This document, Dr. Bawumia is flaunting around, was presented, thoroughly discussed, and rejected. And they appended their signature. Now, after that report had been presented, and meetings, at least one meeting had been held in trying to look for ways of implementing the reforms contained in that document. Now MPP takes their rejected documents, recycles it, and the General Secretary, because maybe he's fighting to make himself relevant, begins to go from one party office to the other. He meets somebody there, and then televisions capture that. That person says, oh, the party will look at their document and respond appropriately. And it is all over the news that that party which he visited accepts their position to replace the voters' register. And that is what is happening. You understand? So it is absolutely untrue that any other political party, or indeed all the political parties, minority political parties, have come together to support the replacement of the voters' register. There's nothing like that. It is part of the fabrication and concoction that is being fed to innocent Ghanaians. Again, even if all those parties have come together, they represent less than 50% of the population, I beg to state. This is the majority party, and that is why we are in power. Yeah. And we represent majority of Ghanaians. So if the minority decides to be making several noises, if they divide themselves into 1,000 groups and be making 1,000 statements in support of one position against the unified position of the majority of the people of the country, it doesn't compel the majority to go and follow what the divided minority is supporting. Then again, somebody is saying that with that person. But that cannot be an immediate solution, because the National ID Card project is a big project that cannot be implemented within the time period that is available for the preparation towards the 2016 election. But eventually, that is going to be the solution. Because if there is a credible national identification, we can as well forget about a voters register and then declare a voting day. Everybody approaches the polling station, show your ID card, and if you are 18 years and above, you are allowed to vote. In some jurisdictions, that is actually what happens. But we are talking about a system where we don't have national ID card. And that is why people have to go to court over the use of various documents. Because if everybody had a national ID card, you wouldn't need national health insurance card for the purpose of registering as a voter. You wouldn't need a passport. You wouldn't need a birth certificate for the purpose of voting. But it is in the absence of this that we are struggling with these other forms of identification. So eventually that is going to be the solution, but that cannot be the immediate solution now. Now, somebody says that, have we made any attempt to contact Togo? We don't have any such obligation. Because in law, he who alleges must prove. So it is up to MPP to come and prove to Ghanaians that indeed they have Togolese register and these things exist. And then they prove their case. So we are in a common law tradition. And then the benefit of doubt goes to the accused, not the accuser. So it is up to them to prove beyond reasonable doubt that their claims are indeed true. So we don't have any obligation to go to Togo looking for a register without names. Another question has to do with the WhatsApp or Facebook message that seems to suggest that Togolese government is angry. And so what? If Togolese government is angry, go and ask the person who is talking about Togolese government. We are not talking about Togolese government. And I don't think that it has any place in this press conference at all. That is why I wasn't bothered to ask about the source of that information. Because we are already questioning the source of some information that is in that, in the same media. So in the absence of any authentication, I cannot sit here and assume that I have seen the face of President Gnassingbé and it looks like an angry person. So So if somebody is angry, it is about them. And it has nothing to do with our claims at all. President, His Excellency Fonya Singbe. Now, somebody is saying that if EC decides to compile the register, what will we do? To say that is to assume that EC will undertake an exercise that defies reason. EC will proceed to act to satisfy people whose claims have no basis, but the only motivation is to try to satisfy some insatiable group of persons. You understand? Because EC is a credible institution, and it looks at a situation, identify the problems, and identify the solution which they believe will address the problem. As I have told you, all these things that they are talking about, they don't constitute any sound basis for EC to take that decision. And indeed, EC does not decide on these things alone. EC will take that decision after they have taken our position into consideration. And as I indicated, we are also submitting a very comprehensive party position to the Electoral Commission. And I'm sure the EC would compare the reasoning in these documents before they arrive at any decision. And we believe strongly in our case. And we don't think that EC will act irrationally. Somebody register so that we can replace stolen or lost cards. You don't need to open the voters register to replace stolen or lost cards. There's a facility there which allows anybody who has had his card stolen or lost to approach any Electoral Commission office, and upon the payment of some small fee, I think 5 cedis, your card will be replaced. So the thing about biometric register is that people are still thinking like in the past. With the manual register, if you get somebody's card, then you can get somebody to go and impersonate and vote. It cannot happen with a biometric register. So indeed, the reason why we ignored this hot air from MPP that people are collecting ID cards, and so what? What would they use them for? If you take my card now, you cannot vote as Asiedu Ketia. And you cannot prevent me from voting. Because all that I need to do, if I'm approaching elections and my card is lost, is that I go to Electoral Commission, pay 5 cedis, and take a new card. And you cannot use my card to vote. So you'll be holding that card as if you have some treasure. Completely useless in your pocket. So there's a facility to replace voters' register.